Welcome to the Valley of Outlaws podcast, a podcast for those looking to take the road less trodden, and a podcast for those seeking more. You are Outlaw number 23, episode 2, series 4. Jacob, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
I always like to ask the same question at the start, which is, in your own words, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do what you do?
So my name's Jacob and I own and run the Henley Distillery. We produce a range of gins and rums under our own brand, and we also help others and produce spirits, or a wide range of spirits, for a lot of other people. I myself trained for 8 years working in other distilleries to set up my own distillery and have that full control over the production and the kind of flavors and the spirits that we create.
And what was it about being like a master distiller in this kind of industry as well that has kind of got you so kind of engrossed and obsessed with it?
So for me, it's the perfect blend of passions that I have. So I love problem solving. I've always been quite kind of interested in as geeky as it sounds, I love maths and numbers. But I also love being creative. Both my parents are artists, have been my whole life. My mum's a very good, unbelievable cook. My brother's been a head chef for years. So flavors is another thing that I'm really, really interested in. And I love food. I love trying new foods, trying new drinks. So that combination of problem solving, also kind of engineering style, working with your hands, and then adding that flavor in as well is just kind of golden combination for me.
And when you were at school, was it kind of the path you saw? Like, what was the vision you had of yourself at school?
So
How different is it now?
Not in the slightest. I think everyone goes through, when you're a kid, you go through random phases. Like I wanted to be an archaeologist, and I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then all sorts of like crazy things. Finally, when it kind of narrowed down, I wanted to be a Formula One car designer.
Interesting.
I love engineering, as I said, problem solving. So I went to university absolutely with that plan. I had a kind of roadmap out that I was doing mechanical engineering to start with, and then was potentially going to do a master's or a kind of additional add-on in aerospace, because I'd researched and that was the best way to get into Formula One and car design. But I got derailed halfway through university because I was on a 4-year course. I took a gap year 2 years in and set up a little pop-up cocktail bar business. And it went phenomenally well. Really, really loved it. Didn't want to do that bar business long-term with the kind of hours and kind of late nights, weekends, very unsociable. But I love the industry. I love the flavors, but I still love the engineering. And yeah, kind of stumbled into kind of lightning strike moment of distilling is that perfect blend of my passions.
Interesting. And so what sparked you to try and do this cocktail pop-up bar business? Like, what was it which you first were interested in with that?
So I wanted to take a gap year. So I'd missed a little bit of schooling and this, that, and the other through an illness I had, which is called ME. And so I was on a 4-year course rather than a traditional 3. And I hadn't taken a gap year before university because I'd been held back a year. I'd missed a year of school and had to repeat it. So by the time I got to university, I thought, actually, I want to have a gap year. It was a mistake not to do it before university. So I've got an opportunity to split my course into 2. During that gap year, I didn't want to just travel and do nothing with it. I wanted to figure out something to do. And I'd been working for catering companies in the area, in and around Henley, where I'm from. And what catering companies were brilliant at was naturally the food for events such as weddings. But at that time, this is now 10 or so years ago, at that time, what would happen for these massive events, kind of spending lots and lots of money, food was amazing, service was amazing, venue was amazing, and then the bar itself was just this afterthought. People would ask the catering company, "Oh, by the way, while you're doing everything, could you also man the bar? Could you do a pop-up bar for us?" And inevitably, the bar was a plastic table with a black cloth over it, and a teenager who doesn't really know the difference between a single and a double.
Yeah.
And that was the bar for these fantastic events. So I spied a bit of an opportunity. We were also talking 10 years ago when there weren't amazing converted Citroen vans and horsebox trailers. Like, this predates that. So there was a big gap in the market, as I saw it, for a proper kind of bar service for events. So I learned how to do cocktails properly. With the help of my dad, built a curved stainless steel bar that could break down into, I think, 13 different bits.
Wow.
And got a trailer. And the kind of pitch for the business was make the bar something that people remember from your event rather than the afterthought. Like, that was the kind of big kind of grab line, I suppose. And went really, really well. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, from then on, lightning strike, didn't go back to university, which was
so. Where did you first see this as an opportunity? There, were you at like a party and went, "God Almighty, look at this! This is a shambles," or was it something you were aware of?
For the bar?
Yeah, to actually
that was working for catering companies.
Okay,
so that was it was
okay.
while I was working as a waiter or kind of bartender sometimes.
Yeah.
And I just thought, all of this fantastic stuff that's going on, and the bar is this nothing thing where actually it could be something amazing. So I did all the throwing the bottles around nonsense as well, just for a bit of fun. Not that I've done it in many, many years, so don't be expecting
you don't do it in the distillery every day. It's
no,
the tours don't include your juggling.
Sometimes it comes up in the tours and experiences, and I very much state I haven't practiced in about 5 years, and I don't want to smash several bottles behind our bar because it would be a disaster.
And you said also that working in this industry is a kind of a combination of all your passions. So what, if you could break down your passions, what kind of were they individually?
So I mentioned kind of maths and numerical problems. I also love working with my hands. So my dad's he now works with me and is co-founder of the distillery, but he's been an artist and designer his whole life. But he started off doing kind of clay and molding and casting into bronze, but then moved more into quite big artistic sculptures with kind of water features made of stainless steel and pumps and how all that works, and bigger art installations where, there's a lot of kind of engineering involved, but he's a very handy person. He can weld stainless steel. He can do all sorts. And I've always loved working with my hands. So distilling and craft distilling really is that opportunity to kind of get hands on with something. And then there's the artistic side, because some people treat distilling as a very scientific approach. So especially your bigger guys, right? So they are drilling down into every little bit of science for something. But you can equally do that with food. You got people like Heston Blumenthal, I suppose, as an example of kind of molecular gastronomy. And you can go down the science route, or you can kind of go down the artistic, kind of passionate route, which is how I approach things. Yeah. And combine that artistry with my mum's kind of amazing cooking and always trying new things and exposing me when I was young to new flavors. That incorporating that in there, and it just, distilling had the whole package really.
Interesting. And that's one of my questions was about this, was actually how do you find a balance between kind of patience and using your knowledge, but then also trying to be as experimental and playful as possible when you're creating drinks?
So that's a really difficult one, because we have this amazing experience, and this will loop round, but it'll make sense. We have this amazing experience at the distillery where you can come along and you can actually distill your very own bottle of gin under our guidance. We've got about 90 botanicals to choose from. And what you get to do with that is you get to make a gin that is perfect for you, essentially. So you don't have to worry, and this is what I say to people, you don't have to worry if no one else in the world likes the gin that you've created, but you love it. That's the point. You get to create it and focus in on you. When I create spirits, whether it's for our own brands or for our clients, I have to have a little bit in the back of my head of going, will anyone else like this? So I might like one particular flavor, and I might want to max out that flavor because I really, really love it. But that's going to be quite divisive. So suddenly I've got to have a little bit of kind of a sensible thought in my head rather than just pure doing what I want. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that kind of on a weekend or on a bit of time off, I don't just create crazy spirits that I'll love and I'll drink at home. But you've always got to kind of commercially, you've got to temper that passion and that creativity with a bit of common sense, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And you were, I don't know if you still are, the youngest master distiller in the UK.
In theory, I was. There's not exactly a list of
there isn't, okay.
that you can search.
So if anyone's listening and wants to challenge it,
go for it. Absolutely. I've just turned 30 last month or a month before. I was master distiller at 25.
Wow.
And yeah,
okay,
didn't know or had heard of anyone else. Did try and kind of look it up a little bit. So yeah, okay. I think so.
So what does it take to become a master distiller?
It depends who you ask. So it's a bit of a subjective term. So these days, more and more people are kind of just using it as, I own my own distillery. Okay. I am a distiller. I do the distilling. So I'm going to call myself this distillery's master distiller. So you got kind of people banding it around a little bit, which is tricky. On the other end of that scale, you've got people who do qualifications and they say, right, you got to pass all these exams, almost like a university course. You got to do all this learning, and then you pass a course. Right, you're now a master distiller. I sit kind of in the middle, really, in my opinion, of the really traditional sense of a master of your craft is you've gone through the apprentice phase, you've gone through a bit of a kind of journeyman phase, and the technical definition is when you have trained an apprentice who has then gone on to kind of graduate on and become a fully fledged, in this case, distiller. That is what kind of qualifies you as a master when you've had that apprentice that's qualified. So I've taught and educated a number of distillers who've gone on to be head distillers and run other distilleries, which is kind of where the name comes, kind of when the title comes from, I guess. Of course. But it was actually a previous distillery that I used to work at that asked me, well, look, would you mind if we referred to you as our master distiller rather than head distiller? Interesting. And so at that point, I'm fine with that.
And so what was your kind of working journey then once you started in the industry?
So it was a bit of an interesting one. So the choice or the decision not to go back to university, kind of having done 2 years and still having 2 years left, was not a popular decision in my household when I made it at the age of 21, I think it was. So what I'd done is I'd researched a lot, and the distilling industry was booming, gin in particular. And I'd researched what was a better career path for me. Essentially, I want to get into distilling? Do I do 2 more years of university, then get into distilling with a degree behind me? Or do I get in now and be 2 years ahead in terms of experience than that alternate version of myself? So I played that out of who's more hireable in 2 years, me with 2 years experience or me with a degree and no experience. And then 4 years out, 6 years out, 8 years out. And the experience won in my head every time. So that was the decision-making process. But then I essentially emailed 3 distilleries that I really liked the look of. And I'd been given a task of, you're going back to university if you can't find a job in a distillery within a month. That was the declaration from my parents. Yeah. So I had a month to find one. I set my sights kind of quite high with 3 that I really like the look of to start with before broadening it out. But sent emails and to those 3. 2 weeks after sending those initial emails, I had an interview and packed my bags and moved from Henley-on-Thames to North Yorkshire. So quite...
That explains... I've always wondered why you were up for that.
Yeah, so it was... I found 3 distilleries, one in North Yorkshire, one in, I think, Norfolk Way, and one down in Cornwall. Not deliberately spread out, that just so happened to be where they were. And yeah, I moved up to North Yorkshire, was an assistant distiller. And then it was quite a rapid rise, learning from an incredibly skilled master distiller who'd worked for Diageo, who owns Gordon's, Tanqueray, all of that sort of, all of those sort of brands. Yeah, was actually involved in the creation of the recipe for Tanqueray 10. Yeah. And he taught me kind of a massive amount within quite a short period in terms of, he was just an encyclopedia of knowledge. And it was amazing to learn from him. 9 months after I joined, he actually left the distillery. And had a chat with the owner, and who pulled me into his office, and he said, look, I want to give you a couple of months to kind of try out. I can and may still hire in from outside for a head distiller, but I think you're progressing well. I want to give you the shot first. So kind of had a trial as head distiller within 9 months of
How old are you then?
22. So yeah, so that was quite scary. And this was at this stage this was a pretty large craft distillery, producing 2,000 to 3,000 bottles a week of premium top quality gin.
Wow.
Craft gin. Team of about 8 or 10 in the distillery at that point. And that was growing over time. But yeah, took that opportunity with both hands, was the head distiller. And it was at that point that I realized I've, by my own admission, fallen on my feet. Yeah. Like I took a very big gamble with not finishing my degree. That was definitely the more sensible choice. But yeah, fell on my feet, absolutely loved distilling. On a trip back to see my parents, talking it through, and I always knew whatever I got into, I wanted to do it for myself. I wanted to have that freedom. And so there and then, pretty much kind of a month or so after being promoted to head distiller, me and my dad registered the Henley Distillery Limited, Henley Gin Limited, all of the domain names for eventually kind of setting up our own distillery, or my own distillery in Henley. And we parked them, because what I wanted to do, and my big ethos is, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it right.
100%.
I wanted to make sure I had all of that relevant experience. But from that point, I was very kind of focused on that end goal. I was trying to think of, right, what skills do I need and what experiences do I need to set up the Henley Distillery and run it properly and well and produce the best quality spirits. So I then almost kind of, a little bit mercenary, maybe, some might see it as, but I built essentially my own training course, my own university course in running a distillery. So I ran that first distillery for a while as head distiller, transitioned to supplying our first supermarket listings, which was huge, going through all the auditing processes and how all that worked. Very stressful, but a very great experience. Left that job. Most people thought I was mad, because that distillery really going places and was doing fantastically well, but left that distillery to join a brand new startup. It was just me and the owner. Went from having a team of about 12 when I left to just me on my own. The owner had another business. He'd work and work in the distillery, but 9 days out of 10, I was working there on my own, back to sticking labels on bottles and deliveries on my way home, markets on a weekend, but learning the pitfalls and the wins of starting a brand new distillery, and kind of where the mistakes were and where we got real good traction and what we did well. So that was an invaluable experience. So I've gone large, quite well established craft distillery, brand new startup. I then got headhunted to help start up a £3 million startup distillery in South Wales. So, and at that point, I'd had 2 distilleries in North Yorkshire, moved to South Wales.
How old again?
That was 25.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a world away from what I'd done before. That was touchscreen operated blending systems, automated bottling line capable of kind of 700 bottles an hour, 5 million bottles a year approximately. And the engineer in me loved it. So it was all how everything kind of plumbed into each other. 8,000 litre blending tanks with the touchscreen systems. They flew me out to Germany to sign off the production of a still that they were buying for £300,000 plus maybe. And yeah, as I say, the engineer in me loved it, but the craft, artisan, passionate person in me, there was a disconnect. It wasn't the products that the way in which I wanted to create products, even though it kind of scratched an itch, definitely with some of my passions. I didn't feel like it encompassed them all. So I turned that really into my first consultancy role, and was essentially, in the end, they offered me the role to run it full time. And they wanted me to stay there and run it full time, but I said no. Help them get launched, help them the production setup get going, and then moved into creating my own consultancy business. And that was really trying to broaden my horizons again of, right, I'm here as a problem solver. Whether you're a new startup distillery, existing distillery, brand, company that wants to create their own spirits. And I tried to dip my toe into as many different kind of fields as possible. Again, just creating experiences for myself before eventually starting Penny Distillery.
It's fascinating that, because at every level you've thrown yourself in the deep end and like forced to swim, which I love.
It became a bit of, it's funny you say that, it's literally kind of how I felt always of whenever I started a job, even going back to kind of when I was at university, kind of summer jobs, somehow inevitably, even if it was just a bar job in a restaurant or whatever, the first week or two, whenever I joined a new job, was always like chaos, as in more bookings that they've ever had, more this, more that. Like somehow I always managed to throw myself in the deep end, and I don't kind of, not necessarily intentionally, but yeah, it's the best way to learn.
Oh, for sure. And I was going to ask you earlier about when you were working with the Master Distiller in the first distillery.
Yeah.
You know, you said it was 9 months for quite intense learning. Like, was it learning through doing or learning through just watching? Like, how do you learn as a assistant distiller?
Learning through doing. He was phenomenal in terms of teaching. He was not someone who would tell you to do something or just say, right, go do this, and you kind of figure it out. He would help and guide, but I think the key thing was it always felt like a conversation. So let's say we were creating a new recipe. It would not be a case of, and you would expect, he's Master Distiller, I'm Assistant Distiller 4 months in, let's say. You'd expect him to say, right, here's the recipe, go distill that for me and learn. Or, right, okay, we've tried that. I think we need to tweak this up, this down, take that out, add this in. It was never like that. It was always, right, what do you think? And it would kind of always push me to kind of give the answer rather than him just tell me. So using my brain, engaging my brain, which is exactly kind of learn by doing, throw me into the deep end. But equally, he was always there to go, if I said, oh, I think we should do this, I'll go, maybe not. So sometimes he'd let me make the mistake if there's no real bad consequences. But it was that guiding hand, but it always felt like it was a conversation rather than him just telling me what to do, which I think massively helps.
Oh, so much. And also when you're in an environment where you don't have the fear to fail as well, that's huge, because you can build confidence and you're willing to try and be at the limits, I guess, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose I shouldn't say this, but day one of distilling, I don't think it was my trial shift. I think it was day one. Had the stills on, just me and him in the distillery. There was another assistant distiller at that time, but he was kind of part-time and he came in to do certain sections a few days a week, but just me in the Master Distiller. And he went for lunch for an hour with the stills on, like open flame burners. I've been in the job for all of about 4 hours. And kind of, I knew ish what was what. And obviously kind of in the middle of the distillation, you're pretty much just collecting and making sure nothing's going wrong. You're not really actively doing much at that point. But at the same time, he just went, right, I'm off for lunch. I'll be back in an hour. And I kind of went, what? And that was day one. Like it was, yeah, you'll be fine. I'm back. I'll be back in an hour. And he went off. He wasn't not even in the distillery. He went out to grab whatever.
So what could go wrong in that kind of position?
Obviously, in theory, nothing went wrong, thankfully. But in theory, it's just nothing really should go wrong. It would have to be an equipment failure rather than anything else, or me not paying attention and something overflowing, which was not going to happen because I pretty much stood there bolt upright staring at the stills for an hour to make sure that nothing was going wrong. But yeah, it would have been, if there was an equipment failure, that would be how to solve that, which I didn't have the experience of.
And so how long did it take for you to be, and it was 9 months till you were offered the job as head distiller. Yeah. How long did it take for you to feel comfortable in that environment where you were like, okay, I can grasp everything that's going on here. Yeah. I don't have the knowledge, but I have the experience a bit to be able to control and run it.
Probably quite quickly, because we were producing pretty much every day. So we were distilling every day. So, and it's quite a repetitive process. Once you've got the recipes down, and so this distillery had 3 gins, 3 gin recipes, and it was essentially one classic recipe with 2 variants of it. So additional flavors added, and it was the repetitiveness of producing the same 3 products every day. and it was 5 days a week was the same thing. So quite quickly, even within a couple of weeks, within 2 weeks, I'd done 10 distillations on 2 stills. So, and it's the same process over and over again. Then there's all the bottling labeling. You don't learn the nuances of a few things until they come up, i.e. you don't learn how to problem solve if you don't know the problem can even arise, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so over time, obviously much more competent, but the actual mechanics of running the still felt like I picked it up very quickly because we were just so busy, which massively helped.
And did you ever suffer from like imposter syndrome in these cases? Did you ever go, Christ, I'm not ready? Or was it like an excitement for the challenge?
I think I still suffer from imposter syndrome now.
Really?
Like and I think, wow, maybe it's a healthy thing, maybe it's not.
I think so.
But yeah, I feel like sometimes I kind of have a little bit of a kind of awakening moment of, am I really like people coming to me and
am I really the boss?
Yeah, exactly that. We're up to, I think, 15 of us in the distillery now.
Wow.
And that terrifies me. End of the month is always scary with payroll looming. But yeah, there's always that element of imposter syndrome. I think, to be honest, early on I had it less because there was less pressure. So I was the assistant distiller. I wasn't expected to know everything. I didn't know everything. And I kind of knew that. I think one of personally a kind of a strength of mine in general is I'm quite honest with kind of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Yep.
And I'm quite good at kind of admitting that and going, right, someone else do that because I'm useless at it.
Sure.
Kind of, I'd much rather entrust you to do it because you've got more knowledge, more experience, and you'll do a better job than I can. So I'm quite good at that, but still when industry events or awards come out or this, that, and the other, kind of there is this little bit in the back of my head that goes, oh, well, that was lucky, which we've got a track record of doing phenomenally well at all these different awards and won fantastic things. So the logical bit of my brain goes, no, like you are good at this, but there's always that little bit of, but you're just fluking it.
So, okay, so if you've got, how do you feel then when you're starting up your own distillery? You've got investment going into it, which is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
You're going, right, how do I build this company now from scratch? Like, how do you feel going into that?
So that's an interesting one because we nearly started in 2020. So we actually launched, our first products went on sale 25th June, 2021, but we nearly launched 2020 and were stopped by COVID. So January through to mid-March, we were finding a location in the centre of Henley. It was a completely different business plan to the one that we ended up launching with, but we'd geared up everything to go for it, and then lockdown hit. And our business plan was centered around visitor center and experience, keeping the lights on and creating the income to support the brand as that grew. And so that was a big shift change, and we had to delay it for a year. So I had an extra year and I've been planning it for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of time to work it out, but it is a lot of pressure. And I think the key thing is a lot of people, when they start distilleries, and they don't quite appreciate the amount of time that goes into the production, but then also the sales and the marketing of it. And a lot of people quite naturally try and start it kind of, right, well, I'm going to keep my job and I'm going to do it on weekends. And I'd analyzed the industry a bit and went, right, okay, if we're going to do all of the production and have our own brands and do all the sales and marketing, because we can't afford someone else to do it, I'm going to have to be all in. Mm-hmm. Like I can't still try and do 4 or 5 days of consultancy and then do this on the side, because if I wasn't all in, it would fail. Yeah. Which is quite a scary one. I did try and keep a couple of a couple of consultancy clients. But actually, by the time we got into the distillery, we're building it, everything else, it snowballed so quickly that I had to completely give up consultancy, which is an amazing thing. But yeah, the pressure is tough. But if you it's one of those things, if you don't take the leap, then you're never going to know. And it's,
How do you cope with kind of being outside your comfort zone? Like, what are you thinking when you recognise it? You go, Christ, we're in it deep.
It's an interesting one. I think there's a kind of quote, I don't know where I read it or where it came from, where it said people assume entrepreneurs are kind of really kind of big risk takers. Whereas actually, in my head or in my experience personally, entrepreneurs take one big risk, i.e. starting your own business. As soon as you got that business, you go from kind of being really kind of risk taking to being the most risk averse people ever. As in, once you've suddenly got something to lose and it's going well, kind of
interesting.
Trying not to go into that area of taking too many risks, because suddenly, you start with nothing, you've got an investment and this, that, and the other. You take the big risk, and then, if that risk fails, you're back to where you were. You've not really lost anything.
Well, you're in more control as well, because there's other quote which is like, it's a bigger risk working for someone else and having them control your future than actually you take control and do it yourself as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's really, I like that.
Okay, so what were some of the biggest challenges you had then, really setting it up in terms of? Okay, so how did you find a location firstly? Actually,
so location was interesting. Location was we originally 2020 wanted to be in the centre of Henley. It was going to be a tiny little 50-litre still and an eight still gin experience where we were going to do tours and distilling experiences. As soon as COVID hit, kind of delayed those plans. I had to continue consultancy. And the business plan evolved into contract production, so producing for other people. Very quickly, we realized that the original location and business plan was not going to hold up. We had kind of 15, 20,000 bottles worth of pre-orders, essentially, or kind of guaranteed sales a year from other clients that kind of my consultancy that wanted me to produce it. And therefore,
was that just off your reputation? Sorry.
That was off clients that I had from my consultancy.
Okay.
Because what I used to do for some clients was, I used to develop the recipes, help them kind of with whatever I could, although I'm not really a sales and marketing person. And then I would find a contract distillery that would produce it for my client. And then introduce them, teach that distillery how to make the product that I developed, and then partner them up, and they were happy. So it was a couple of those clients that came to me and said, oh, well, when your distillery sets up, we'll just move our production to you. So that changed the whole game. Suddenly realized that, so with the Henley distillery, we're about 4 or 5 minutes outside of Henley, because we very quickly realized that on the scale that we need to be, we can't be in Henley. Original business plan was distillery in Henley. After 4 or 5 years, maybe we get big enough that we'll need an out-of-town location because we'll need pallet deliveries regularly and this, that, and the other, and the logistics of Henley being a small market town, a one-way traffic system that we would block and kill off with lorries. We've had, I always say this to people, we've had the most amazing support from the local community and people in and around Henley over the last 3 years. It's been amazing. I don't think we'd have had any of that support if we'd started in the centre of Henley and blocked the traffic for half an hour, 45 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. So we had to find an out-of-town location. We stumbled across this gorgeous 18th century barn. And yeah, just very, very fortunate to find it. It was a dirt floor storage barn when we found it. And the landlords have been amazing. They put down polished concrete floor, drainage in the floor, and then we did everything else of rewiring the barn, putting in gas lines for our stills and pallet racking, etc., etc. But yeah, we stumbled across it because we needed somewhere out of town to get those lorry deliveries in, kind of daily or kind of 2 or 3 times a week at least. So, yeah.
And you said also, when you became head distiller at your first job, you had it. You already reserved the name, the Henley Distillery.
Yeah.
You started visualizing what it was going to be like. So how many of the things you thought and foresaw actually came true, and how many things did you not kind of see coming, which were problems?
So number of things. I'm a big believer in, I wouldn't go back and change anything. So there's definitely made mistakes in setting this distillery up and what we've done in the last 3 years. However, incredibly proud and happy with where things are now. So even the mistakes I wouldn't go back and change. But yeah, we pegged the business names because we felt like Henley as a town and a brand in and of itself was kind of perfect for us, as well as being my hometown and having that connection to it. It will work locally because it's a local product and we love supporting local and there's a massive kind of factor of that in there. But also it's internationally recognized, and even if someone's never heard of Henley-on-Thames as a town, Henley as a name, and I use this word not in a negative way, it's slightly generic, i.e. if you've never heard of the town and don't know that association, it just sounds like a brand name. It works really, really well. So by pegging those kind of out, we wanted to ring fence them so no one else could kind of swoop in before we were ready. But in terms of mistakes, and kind of pitfalls that I didn't see coming, I think the core one really was what caught me off guard was how quickly we grew and how quickly we accelerated, because my experience and my knowledge and skills as a distiller were incredibly, incredibly useful naturally setting up a distillery. Yes. But the tipping point was I didn't recruit soon enough for a distiller because the split between me and my dad is he does all of our kind of branding, design, label design, etc. Mm-hmm. He builds a lot of the kind of things that we use in the distillery, and then he does all of our, or kind of a lot of our own brand sales. We've now got other people that do that as well. But then kind of that was his division of labor. Mine was all of production, business, and contract sales. So dealing with contract clients because I've got that knowledge of industry. Those all exploded, and quite quickly, kind of I was having to run all of the day-to-day production as well as the business and the contract production sales. And there was not quite a succession plan in there quick enough because things just grew and spiraled. But if you're a business owner that starting a distillery that you have never distilled before and you're hiring in those skills, you've already got this, you've already hired someone day one. Yeah. You're not worried about being sucked into production. Whereas I got caught in a little kind of 6 to 12 month period of I had to do all the production, and then I was just juggling far too much. Now we've got a phenomenal head distiller called Ben, who is brilliant, and the creativity of the two of us together is amazing. But I think that's the biggest mistake was actually because we had the skills, we didn't hire in and have that succession plan when I got too busy doing other stuff.
Was that just because you took a conservative approach to how quickly it would grow as well? In terms,
definitely. Yeah. I think I always model everything. So if I'm doing financial or anything, I model everything off worst case scenario. Yeah. So I do kind of worst, middle, best. Yeah. But I think, I'm very conservative, and we didn't start with a massive amount of money. We basically started with enough capital to buy the initial equipment and pay the kind of initial rent and this, that, and the other. And then we had nothing in our bank account. We took a small loan out to get the initial ingredients to make our first batches. And we had a couple of contract batches, which we knew they were on 30-day payment terms. So that was fine. So, but we borrowed money to get the ingredients to make those batches, knowing that then that would come in. So and ever since then, we've been self-sufficient. We've not had any more cash injections into the business. So I have to play it conservative. And even within marketing and sales, we probably could grow even quicker if I was willing to risk getting in a loan and injecting it into the sales and marketing. Yeah. The other side of that is, if I was from a sales and marketing background, I'd probably have that confidence to do it. Yeah. But I come from a production background. It's why we're so good as a contract production distillery, is because I can make really good products and really good spirits, and we can do all of the logistics really, really well. The sales and marketing is the bit that scares the hell out of me. Like, that's the bit that I have no clue about. And we kind of fumbled through in the last few years, and it's gone really, really well. But investing money into that feels like a black hole of could easily just spend 10, 20, 30 grand or more and have no clue whether it's going to give us a benefit or not. Versus for contract clients, it's a dream business model for me because, I just have to make it and you do all the hard stuff selling it. Yeah, right then. That works. Works really I'm fine. I'll build up a pallet, send it wherever you want.
Love that. Did you find it hard to delegate then some of the production stuff? Is that something which I imagine when you've been in the space and you've done it a number of times, and you know how you like to work.
Yeah.
You want to hire someone who works the same way as you.
Yes. So the initial theory, and we actually hired someone as an assistant distiller, was kind of exactly along those lines of, let's get someone in who's not got loads of experience, has a bit of experience, so they can hit the ground running a little bit and start taking things off my plate, but someone with not too much experience, so they're not set in their ways. Yes. Someone that I can mold exactly how I want them to run everything, and that's going to alleviate stress off me because they'll do it how I teach them to do it. Unfortunately, we hired someone and it didn't work out for a couple of reasons, but in the end, we went with head distiller with more experience who could then come in, and yes, he had to adapt to how we work and how I want to work and the production methods and the different techniques that we use and I use. But yeah, he came in and could hit the ground running. And I think I've worked in enough distilleries and I've been a head distiller where I've had to delegate production.
Yeah, of course.
And even when it's not been my distillery, I've always still felt a massive passion and protectiveness over the quality of anything that I do. I'm very kind of proud of everything that I produce and always have been. And so that probably helped temper it a little bit. If I'd not worked as a head distiller for other people and had kind of assistant distillers, etc., to delegate to before, I think it would have been a bigger wrench than it still was. But yeah, I think if I hadn't had that experience of delegating before, it would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, because you've used also the word artisan a few times.
Yes.
An artisan is someone who puts love and passion into every stage of the process as well.
Yeah.
Like, it is just as important the process as it is the result.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So I could understand that as well. I find it the same. I mean, even with the podcast, this, like, I do every part of it, and I'd be scared of giving elements away to go, what if they don't film it the way I like it? What if they don't edit it like it?
What if they don't quite press the record button properly and you miss one of the cameras, you miss something, and you've got a big
exactly. But you know, it's probably quite difficult to be able to do that. But I think also there's an element though of authenticity you keep as well, though, when you have that focus on process and focus on trying to also, I guess, allow people to grow in their own way, but within a kind of bounded direction.
Absolutely. And that's where new products can come in, and Ben Head Distiller has been phenomenal in new product development. Having two distillers of our experience in the and rank, I suppose, for lack of a better phrase, in one distillery is quite unusual. But it means that our creativity can kind of bounce off each other. And he's got this brilliant creativity, which is kind of completely untamed. Like, I'll walk into the distillery and there'll just be random things, random jars and things steeping on the side. The one I always laugh at and have a joke with him and others is, I once walked in and there was just a jar filled with clear liquid alcohol, and 3 slices of white bread just sat on the side. And I walked in, looked at it, looked at him, and just went, yeah, it's about right, and kept on walking. But he's got this brilliant untamed creativity for it, where I told you earlier, or I said earlier, about there's got to be the little bit of logical kind of factor. So he doesn't quite have that. He produces amazing spirits that are really unique, and I absolutely love personally as a distiller and find them really interesting. But commercially, sometimes lacking a little bit, because they're so specific that a small percentage of people will absolutely love them. Yeah. But the majority of people won't get on with them.
Interesting.
So that's where we can also he can add these crazy ideas in, and then I can try and harness them along with my own ideas, and we create some really cool products.
Yeah, that sounds...
We've just launched our limited edition, which is a regatta cup.
Yes,
so
I've seen this.
It's like a summer cup style. So you treat it like you would Pimm's with lemonade, and it's made with our classic dry, so we're starting with the best ingredients. It's kind of like cooking. You want to start with the best ingredients, and then you can create the best product. So we start with our classic dry, won England's best London dry gin at the World Gin Awards in 2022.
Wow.
We use locally produced honey, and we steep that with a mixture of fruits, a little bit of Earl Grey tea, blend some vermouth in there, and it's really rich, really complex. You can treat it like Pimm's with lemonade. You can put it with ginger ale. You can put a drop in the bottom of a glass of Prosecco. And it's got loads of character. But that's where, Ben's coming up with ideas. I'm tweaking them and directing him where I want him to go with it. But yeah, it's him that's produced that recipe really, with a little nudges here and there from me. And yeah, that's really exciting for the distillery going forward about what we can produce.
For sure. I'm going to have to convert my sister because she's obsessed with Sitsmith's London Cup. But we're going to have to get her on the local Henley stuff. It's going to be better.
Definitely is.
I want to just ask a technical question there. So you say you're adding in like honey and stuff. Like, what are you adding into? You're adding into distills? Or where do you start adding in the flavours?
It depends what you're producing. So for a London dry gin, for instance, which most people would be familiar with that term, but maybe not necessarily know what it means. London dry gin is a production method.
Yes.
So you can produce London dry gin in Australia if you want to, as long as you follow the rules, which is all of the flavours in a London dry gin have to be distilled in. So the flavours and the botanicals have to go inside a still.
Yes.
Impart their flavours that way, distill through, and then for London dry gin, you can only add two things post-distillation. You can add purified water or kind of pure water to adjust the ABV, the percentage, to get that right. You can also add additional pure alcohol. Now, we don't add any additional pure alcohol. The quality instantly drops off a cliff. We produce something called single shot gin, where all of the flavour is passed through to the alcohol, and every drop of alcohol in our bottles has been through our stills, has had the refining process, the smoothing process. The quality is the absolute highest that you can get. But
I remember you said something about this to me when I came down, which is the triple stilled kind of like drinks. It sounds more impressive, but it just means they've had to do it a few more times to get it right.
So, well,
is that incorrect?
That's incorrect. Okay, that's slightly
without slating the industry.
No, so sometimes it depends. People have different definitions. It's kind of like going back to the Master Distiller thing.
Yeah.
People have different definitions, and they kind of, this is where marketing spin and kind of, I'm a craft artisan, whatever person, right? So, and I'm not anything to do with sales and marketing typically. So I always have hated marketing spin, where technically within some broad definition, you are correct, but you're very much misleading the public. So sometimes when people say triple distilled vodka, there is a certain type of still called a column still. And within a column still, there's a big column attachment where the vapor has to pass through a series of plates in the columns. You might have seen them. They look quite steampunky, these type of stills with portholes and all sorts. So technically, what's happening when the vapor goes through that column is it's condensing. So it's going from it's been heated up. The alcohol goes into a vapor. It then condenses and goes back into a liquid through this plate, and then heats up again, evaporates, and then moves up to the next plate, condenses. Some people refer to those as mini distillations. So, right, it's gone through 3 plates, so it's been distilled 3 times.
Okay.
Versus what most people would think about triple distilled is, they've distilled it once, they've taken it out, they've put it into a or kind of the same still or whatever, but they've started the process again and they've distilled it again. Yeah. So it's,
that makes sense. Makes sense.
There's a lot of little kind of sleight of hand and trickery in wordplay sometimes.
Yeah. Well, as the case with everything. What's kind of the goal then with the Henley Distillery? What's the vision for it from now on?
So kind of day one, we always used to get the question was, what's the exit strategy? People assumed that we were building this up to sell, which is not the case at all. I want to, the future and the aim really is to produce or kind of run a business that I just love to run. So build it up to the point where we've got, and I don't have a set number of bottles, a set turnover, a set number of staff, but build it up to a certain point and level where I'm happy with the size of the company and I enjoy running it. I don't want to run a business with 100, 150 people in it where I don't know every single person individually. Yeah. I'd love to run a business, and this is where I don't have the number, but with 30 people in it or 40 people, whatever that number is that I feel is manageable, that is not, it's always going to be elements of stress, but not overly stressful. We've got everyone doing their jobs. No one in the distillery is overly stressed in terms of we're not constantly at that point overworked and fighting to grow. essentially capping the business at some point in terms of number of bottles produced. At that point, you can really knuckle down on efficiency. You can grow that team bonding and create that kind of family business that we're aiming for.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And also a really refreshing approach to it, because everybody goes, I want to make it as big as possible. But actually, your thing is, I want to enjoy the company I've built.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a really cool industry, right? Yeah. So I don't know many other kind of jobs where, okay, you might start at 5 a.m., but you're drinking by 7 a.m. Like, it's not a bad work day. It's not great on a hangover. I wouldn't advise drinking the night before. But no, being more serious, it's a really fun industry to be a part of. Yeah. There's some really cool people in the industry doing really amazing things, and getting to meet them, share your ideas, share their ideas, try different products, create new products. That's kind of where the real fun is. That's why I also love the fact that we're a contract production distillery. So I mentioned before, my first distillery, we produced 3 gins. We did some more additions later on, but you produce 3 gins, and then week by week, you make the same 3 gins every day, every week. Whereas for our distillery, kind of intentionally and unintentionally built it to be really fun to run, because we've got people coming to us with all different ideas, all different kind of things that they want to produce. And then I have to figure out, 1, how to produce it, 2, how to make it taste good. And then every production day, we're doing something different. So that variation is really, really fun to run. And yeah, definitely want more of that.
One of those madmen is me with my spray cocktails, which
is
getting exciting about.
Yes.
Actually. Very excited. Okay, I'd like to go on to the ME now.
Yeah.
So that took you a year off university. So can you explain what happened?
So that wasn't, so not so much that led to me taking my gap year. Okay. But if we rewind, I got ME when I was 14.
Okay.
So at the age of 14, I was living in and around Henley, and therefore rowing is quite a big thing in Henley with the regatta. And between school and kind of a club in Henley that I was a member of, I think I was rowing 6-7 times a week, like super, super fit, absolutely obsessed with it. Wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge University just because I wanted to do rowing. Wow. Like I absolutely loved it, obsessed with it. I got ME right at the beginning of my second year of GCSEs. So within the first month or two, I can never remember whether it was swine flu or bird flu that was kind of at the time, like 50% of the school was off ill. And I got one of the 2 of those, I can't remember, and then tonsillitis at the same time. And from my understanding, still limited, really, from my understanding, those 2 clashing together crashed my immune system. Wow. When it rebooted, it basically stole lots of energy from me. And the kind of the symptoms of, or kind of one of the symptoms of ME, or the kind of main one that people associate with it, is kind of severe lack of energy. Yeah. So I went from rowing 6-7 days a week to bedbound for about a year, maybe 2 years.
Bloody hell.
So a pretty big swing. So I missed my entire GCSE year. I got, still to this day, I'm the proud owner of 1 GCSE because I was quite good at maths. So I basically got carried into the exam hall, sat down, did the papers, carried back out again. But it's fine because I got straight A star.
Well, there you go. That's all that matters.
There you go.
You did
Bulletproof.
There you go. I love that. You didn't even go to lessons.
Yeah. I got, in my GCSEs, the S on the end is debatable, but in my GCSEs, I got a 100% A star. It's fine.
That's fantastic.
So in the end, I didn't have to repeat that GCSE year, but I still wasn't well enough into my first year of A levels to cope with anything. So that was pretty much a washout year.
Wow.
So that's the point that I was then essentially held back a year going into A levels. I then kind of worked through my A levels, and I feel massively fortunate because a lot of people who have ME don't recover to the extent that I have. They struggle with it for many, many years. I feel very fortunate that it was quite a slow progression and sometimes would be kind of backward steps, but kind of slowly progressed to the point where I could attend a few lessons a week, be pretty much dropped at the door.
Wow.
To the classes, and then picked up again, and kind of slowly recovered with a kind of wide range of different testing, different kind of trying out different diets, trying out lots of different things. And kind of got a little bit of a formula that slow incremental progression. Finished my A levels and had my sights set on Formula One car design, mechanical engineering. And the reason why I had a 4-year course at university was because I'd missed my GCSEs. I needed to do a foundation year. So my first year was like a foundation year at university, and then go into the proper kind of traditional 3-year degree. And that's where, because I'd taken 3 years to do my A levels, which should have taken 2, I was, at the end of my A levels, I was 19 and stupid by my own admission, which is where, most of my friends have taken a gap year. So if I don't take a gap year, I will catch up with my friend group and kind of my peers, and it'll be like I never missed anything. So that was the stupidity that kind of, as I say, going back, I would never change any mistakes because I love where I am today, because that then caused me to take the break year in the middle of my degree that ended up me kind of discovering distilling and everything else that came from it. So it's a funny one. But
how long did it take to get diagnosed with that? Is that something which they can get straight away, or were you?
That was a long time. So that was, I basically kind of had these 2 illnesses and just didn't recover. Was declining, if anything. And ME is something that you can't test for. So basically, the route to diagnosing ME is essentially kind of ruling out everything else. So crazy number of blood tests and this, that, and the other, and kind of slowly kind of crossing things off the list. And yeah, it was a struggle, and my mum and dad were both brilliant, but I have to kind of give special praise to my mum. She's kind of nickname as a bit of a joke, but it's true of, she's kind of queen of research. So she was just on the internet, on kind of looking up, trying to ring people up who'd had ME or had kids who had ME, and just learning anything and everything that she could to try and help. And then, it was very slow to start with. Naturally, very frustrating for a lot of people, because outwardly, if you've got a broken leg and you're limping, you might have a cast, you might have something, and it's very identifiable. With ME, there is nothing kind of outwardly to say that you've got any sort of problem or anything like that. So there's a massive stigma about it, and it's very tough on you, especially if, I think whatever age, it's tough. But at that age, kind of for me, core kind of development years of social engagement and this, that, and the other. And that's where also you start to realize where, when you've got that little energy, kind of stood here today, and kind of you might or might not realize kind of just social energy. And people talk about these days social battery, but kind of just being in a room, even if you're not participating in the conversation, just listening to the conversation and trying to keep up with it takes out a huge kind of way more energy than you even think. So learning to do that and kind of manage my energy levels was a really, really big thing. The best way I found to describe kind of how it felt to myself was, again, I'm a geek with maths, right? So whether it's a 3-day kind of, there's no day specific, but whether it's a 3-day or 5-day moving average, how I treated it and how I think about it, even to this day, is, let's say I had 100 points of energy to use within a 5-day period. And it would kind of, any 5-day moving average, I'd only be able to use a maximum of 100 points of energy. So if I used 70 points day 1, I've now only got 30 points left for days 2 to 5. And that means that I'm essentially potentially bedbound for a couple of those days. Because even as I was getting better, I'd have what I call crash days, where I do too much. And sometimes I know I'm doing it and know the consequences are coming. Sometimes I do it by accident or whatever. And then I'd wake up the next day and it would be like kind of day 1 again.
Wow.
So it's a really tricky thing, but everyone's experiences are different. And I went through a long time of kind of, as I progressed and as I got better from ME and recovered, I kind of shied away from it. I loved at university for the first quite a few months, no one knew that I had ME because I'd recovered to the point where I could kind of hide it a little bit. And for the previous 5 years before that, I'd been kind of been labelled with ME as well. Even friends, and no one was horrible, no one was anything, but it was that kind of, I had that feeling of people were trying to protect me, which, and they were just being lovely and generous and kind, but there was always that edge of, okay, well, we've got to be careful because Jacob doesn't have much energy and we need to accommodate for that. Whereas going to university, the opportunity to put that behind me and have no one know was amazing.
You were treated equally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly that.
And was that a big kind of self-conscious kind of thing on your mind as well when you're ever, I guess, with your peer group and stuff like people judging before really knowing as well in terms of?
I think judging, not so much. It was, as I say, I think it was all down to people being kind, but kind of my mates would come pick me up from the house to go to the cinema or whatever. And like my dad, again, being just lovely, really, would kind of pull one of them aside. Look, could you just make sure you're keeping an eye on Jacob, do that? And I hated it because it puts me on the outside. It feels like it puts me on the outside. In actual fact, it's not putting me on that side. People are including me and they're going out of their way to include me and help me. But I always had this stigma about it. I kind of for a long time put it behind me and didn't really talk about it. And kind of really focused on myself and what have you. But I'm kind of turning that corner now. And in the last couple of years, and especially this year is a big one for me, is I want to flip that script. I want to be talking about it more.
Yeah.
I want to be helping wherever and whenever I can.
Yeah.
For instance, we've just partnered with, a couple of months ago, an ME charity as our kind of distillery charity partner for the year. So we do as much charity work as we can in general, kind of donating bottles or tasting vouchers, etc., to some great causes. But we decided to try and focus in and really help kind of and funnel all of our efforts into really making a difference in one place.
Fantastic.
And we thought, what better to choose than an ME charity.
And aren't you walking the 3 Peaks, or have you walked already?
No, so that is going to happen. I got given, I think it was 5 weeks notice there was a spot open for an ME charity and a couple of others to do the 3 Peaks. And I had no prep time, but I was determined to do it. And then I got COVID about a week and a half before it was due. And I thought, right, I'm going to recover. Yeah. And then about 3 or 4 days before, I was still sick as a dog. So I'm determined we are going to do it. Loads of friends and family and people in the distillery have said they want to do it as Amazing. Well. So I didn't do it kind of when I was supposed to do it, but we're going to reorganize it and get a big group of us and do it properly.
Fantastic.
There's spots open if you.
I might come and join you, to be honest with you. I quite like the idea of doing this. Okay. We'll go on to some more personal stuff. At this point, people usually go, well, I'm in a therapy session, so I'm going to try and the more personal questions. But what's your biggest self-limiting belief that you overcame?
That's an interesting one. I think there is that element of imposter syndrome that we talked about earlier, in terms of you feel like you don't belong, or you feel like you don't deserve it, or this, that, and the other. And I think that's a big one, because I think that scares a lot of people into not taking that little extra leap. And I said I'm kind of risk averse with the business, but I think that big leap starting the business, you've got to overcome that imposter syndrome. You've got to believe that you can do it. And I think that's probably a limiting factor for a lot of people, because when you're weighing up whether to start a business or to do a new venture, you're weighing up risk, right? And one of those risk factors is, will I succeed? Can I do it? Am I good enough to do it?
Yeah. And
I think, self-belief kind of ties into that imposter syndrome massively.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. And I've suffered from that as well. As like, you do something and you go, I don't deserve the success which I want to get from this, or that I can get from it. It's the stupidest thought ever, but it just comes into your mind.
And it's illogical. Yeah. And like, even though you recognize that it's illogical, there's still something now and again. Yeah. It's
it's a hard one to shift that, but I think it's just you've got to prove to yourself that you do deserve it as well. Like enough evidence that you've done enough to prove it. That you get there in the end, don't you?
Definitely.
What does fulfillment mean to you?
I'm a big one on kind of creating the life that I want to live. So that's kind of where we don't want to grow the business kind of endlessly. We want to cap it. Kind of being fulfilled. You've got to have that balance between work and
play
and home life, and naturally that shifts. And so that's not a fixed thing where at all times you must have an equal balance of everything, because naturally in some periods, whether it's a week, a month, kind of a year, you're going to have to maybe work more to then have that eventual goal of balance. But yeah, being fulfilled is going into work every day and enjoying what you do, coming home at the end of every day and still being, even though you love work, still being kind of content and happy and having things to look forward to in your home life. So yeah, you've got to, fulfillment has got to be all encompassing. It can't just be happy with one area. You've got to work on every area of your life. Yeah.
What's your advice to people who've just finished school, about to go into university, maybe entering their 20s?
You would expect probably me to not be a big advocate of university, seeing as I left halfway through. However, I'm a massive advocate of university. I think I learned some core skills and some really key things, and I grew a lot as a person. I might not have ended up with the kind of piece of paper at the end as the degree, but I think it's a really crucial experience. You can imitate it and you can do it in other ways, i.e. I did university, but then I moved 4 hours away from my hometown, took a job where I didn't know anyone around me. And that's a lot of growing up is involved in that as well. So I think put yourself in unfamiliar situations, roadmap things out. So I talked before about how my decision to leave university, I looked at the two alternate versions of myself in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and kind of, I'm a big believer in, if you've got an end goal that you want to reach, it's absolutely reachable. You've just got to figure out the path. Yeah. There is a path, and the only limiting factor is there will be sacrifices along that path, and are you willing to make those sacrifices? Kind of, no matter what you want, there is a path. Okay, maybe now I'm turned 30, I probably couldn't reskill up and try and be a doctor or kind of whatever.
You could
but
do.
I technically I could.
Time.
I mean, if I was willing to sacrifice everything, possibly could. But yeah, some things are more outlandish than others. But yeah, there is a path, and if you're willing to stick to it, then you can do it.
I align with that, because I also think that if you've got a vision for something you want, if you don't think you can do it, someone else out there is going to be able to achieve that. So you might as well stick around and be that person who can achieve it. Like, right. Someone's going to do it. Your parents, okay, because we've talked a bit about, they've been very influential for you. So how did they raise you to kind of think outside the box, and how have they changed, I guess, the way you've seen the world, I guess?
So yeah, I alluded to, both my parents are artists, and for my whole life they've been self-employed. So that's where that drive of, no matter what I went into, even if I went into Formula One car design, doesn't mean I would have expected to start a Formula One car design or Formula One team. But kind of that little bit of entrepreneurial vibe of growing up and seeing my parents do it, seeing them work for themselves, seeing the good times and the tough times as well, factored into that. But I think, it's that go out and do it yourself and get it done mentality that really is what kind of they instilled in me, and an appreciation for doing things properly. So really kind of lower volume, high quality sort of thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be lower volume when you talk about wider world, but it's that handcrafted or that quality aspect that people associate with. And that's what art's all about, right? Art is probably the ultimate kind of quality over quantity thing, because you want those amazing pieces. So yeah, I think instilling that drive in me and that kind of go get it attitude, as well as developing the creative side, which you need to think outside the box a little bit. You need to have a creative spark. Ironically, they're both fantastic artists. My dad can draw this, that, and the other, but is mainly sculpture and design. My mum, amazing painter, ran a cake business for a long time, which you kind of making cakes you wouldn't believe. Like Instagram barely touches what she could do with kind of making replica handbags in cake that you can't tell the difference between the real one.
Until you try and eat it.
Until you try and eat it, you might notice the difference then. But yeah, that creative side. But somehow I can't draw a stick man. Like I'm no artistic ability is in that sense has come down to me. But I think the creativity is manifested in a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last 3 questions. What does success mean to you?
I think success is happiness. I don't think people set targets and numbers are arbitrary. Like in my head, when we registered the business names, I thought, right, I'll be successful. And if I have my own distillery when I'm 30, kind of 30 is a round number, but really round numbers are meaningless. Same with everything else. If you can earn £30,000 a year and be happy, then that's success.
Yeah.
If you can earn £80,000 a year and be happy, that's also success. One is not better than the other. I think, creating that balance in your life, making sure that you're doing the things that you want to do, you're seeing the people that you want to see, as well as kind of being successful in your professional life and being proud of what you do.
Yeah.
And obviously money does come into it because you need to survive, and money unlocks certain things. Yeah. Money can unlock time to see the people that you want to see and the ability to do things that you want to do. But if you're happy, success is very arbitrary.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, for young entrepreneurs or old, what are the keys to following and succeeding at your dreams?
I think knowledge is the number one thing.
Okay.
I think knowledge and experience, because you have to know what you're getting yourself in for. So I said about the goal, and there's a path, you've just got to find it.
Yes.
If you don't have the knowledge, you're not going to create the path.
Yeah.
Or you're going to create the path halfway and then not know how to do the last little bit, or have made a crucial mistake. You've gone right when you should have gone left at the beginning. So you've got to think it out. You've got to plan it out. Experience is critical, and do something that you know and you're passionate about, because it is going to turn into work. No matter how passionate you are about something, there are elements of if you work for someone else, there are elements of any job that you might love, and there are elements that you'll absolutely hate. That's the same even if you're running your own business. Kind of when it gets into VAT accounting and having meetings with accountants and all this, that, and the other, and coming back from, I mentioned to you, I just come back from a week off and opened up my inbox and I had 180 emails. That's oh God. Okay. Yeah. Some of those emails are really nice to respond to, and there's really lovely things, but just that, oh God. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of work. So you've got to really, really be passionate about what you're doing. If you're going to be setting up something, it's going to take over your life. There's going to be elements that you don't like, even if you like the majority of it. And you've got to put as much time and effort into those as the bits that you do like. Yep. So yeah, that passion is crucial.
Love that. And you're just married.
I am.
You haven't got kids yet, have you?
No.
Okay. What's the one lesson you'd like to teach your future children about life?
One lesson. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but you can achieve whatever you want to as long as you've kind of got that clear path. I think it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with living with no regrets, which is really kind of basic answer.
I like it.
but
simple answers are the best.
Yeah, there's nothing I hate more than looking back on a situation and going, oh, I wish I'd just done it. Like, I wish you're always going to regret something more that you haven't done than you have done. You might do something and it might go disastrously wrong, but at least you know. kind of, at least you've still gained something in that you've learned from the mistake. If you never do it, you're never going to know. And so that goes hand in hand with, right, you've figured out the path, or you think you've figured out the path to get what you want, right? You've got to go do it. Because if you figure out the path and never actually action it and never actually do it, what's the point?
Love it. Great place to finish. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on the Value of Outlaws podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Been a great conversation. So interesting, actually. And also, I didn't realize how much our mindset aligns on so many things, which is really cool to know. So next time at the distillery, we've got a lot more time needed to talk about things.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Value of Outlaws podcast. Please follow us across Spotify and YouTube and see all our latest news across our socials.